Thank you.
Thank you, everybody in the back. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. So, my name is Yafet Tuwelde, and I want to acknowledge that we are on the ancestral territories of the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe, and in particular, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, whose territory we are gathering here on today. And this territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. And like I said, my name is Yafet Tuwelde, and I'm your candidate for York Southwestern in this year's federal election in 2019. And today, I'm pleased to be joined by many of my colleagues and friends. Andrea Vasquez Jimenez from York Center, candidate for York Center. Naima Farah, candidate for Etobicoke North. Leah Kelsey, candidate for Willowdale. Nikki Clark, candidate for Mississauga Moulton. Dr. Hal Berman, candidate for Markham Stouffville. And Nicholas Thompson, candidate for Don Valley East. I'm also extremely honored to be joined by many of our elected officials here in this room today. Firstly, from my own riding, York Southwestern MPP Faisal Hassan. And then two Supreme elected officials here right in Humber River Black Creek, Tom Rakocevic, MPP. And Anthony Peruzza, our city councilor for Humber River Black Creek. Thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you to the warm welcome to Humber River Black Creek. And I am extremely proud to introduce my friend, candidate for Humber River Black Creek in this year's federal election, Maria Ajameri.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yafet. Is this on? Okay, good. Thank you. Before I bring our leader up here to speak, I want to say a couple of things about him. When I first met Jagmeet Singh, I was presented with an image of a man who is a natural-born leader, with integrity, an honest man, a man who I want to stand beside, a man who I want to help lead Canada and Canadians. And then, when I saw his big poster on the Yorkdale Shopping Plaza, I was doubly impressed. And his face should be plastered all over Canada. Really, really. He's going to talk to you today, friends, about what's important for Canadians. He's going to talk about affordability. There are students from York University here who need to hear about what it's like for them and what he's going to do about it. There are many seniors here who are struggling to pay for their medicine. And Jagmeet Singh is going to talk about that, about housing affordability. These are things that everyday Canadians need and want and desire and hope for. Jagmeet Singh.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh,
Can you allow me to permit me a moment to just show some love to Maria and Yafet for their awesome introduction as being candidates. Maria, I'm sure you know, but as a city councilor, as a passionate activist for this community, for the city of Toronto, she's someone who gets what people are going through. And she's someone who's going to fight very hard to build a better future. So I'm so incredibly honored to have Maria Ajameri and Yafet and our entire team of candidates on our side and on people's side. Thank you. And we're in a really cool spot right now. We're right on the boundary between two ridings. So we're representing today not only Humber River Black Creek, but also right beside us, York Center. So it's great to have our candidate, Andrea, with us. Friends, I want to tell you a little bit about what this election is all about. And Maria touched on it, and Yafet has spoken on this, and all our candidates have spoken about it. We see in this community, like many communities, people who are having a hard time. They're struggling with things like housing. It's hard to find a place to call home. People are worried about the cost of healthcare. More and more, it's harder and harder to afford things like medication, but other things as well, like dental care. Many people are putting it off. They don't choose to get their teeth cleaned or to take the time to take care of their dental health because it's too expensive. And we know that transit is something that people really desperately need here in the community. They want to be able to get around, and it's hard because it's not being invested in enough. And we know that young people are looking at the future and not filled with hope and excitement, but are worried. They're worried because they can't find a job. There's high rates of unemployment here in the city, for young people particularly. But we also know that young people are worried about the future because they're worried about the climate crisis. And we will look at all these things that people are worried about. And we see what the Liberals and the Conservatives are doing about it. And I put to you that they are more preoccupied with making life easier for the people at the very top, and that makes life harder for everyone else. They've chosen to help those who are already doing well, the powerful corporations. They've time and time again, when push comes to shove, helped them out, and it's made people hurt. I want to show you some examples. You know, we talked about young people who should be hopeful about the future, who should be excited about what's going to come in the future. Instead of being excited, they're worried because they've got crushing student debt. They're crushed with the weight of student debt. And I think about the choices that this government's made, Mr. Trudeau, the choices that Mr. Trudeau specifically has made. Over the past 4 years, while Mr. Trudeau's been in government, he's been charging students interest on their student debt. He's been profiting. He's been profiting on student debt. So over 4 years, Mr. Trudeau has taken $3 billion off the backs of students by charging them interest. Higher than banks even. He's charged interest, prime, plus 3%. That's higher than a bank would give you. That's our own government. But that's a choice of Mr. Trudeau. And on the flip side, that's $3 billion he's taken from students. But on the flip side, what does he do for corporations? Well, last year, there was $6 billion in corporate loans owed to the government. Guess what he did with those loans? He forgave them. He wrote them off. Look at that contrast right there. This is Mr. Trudeau, who claims to be helping young people out. He picked the pockets of young people to the tune of $3 billion, and he gave corporations $6 billion by waiving loans. That's the contrast, right? That's the contrast we have. And, you know, seniors are worried because their healthcare needs are becoming more and more, and it's harder and harder to pay for. Medication is so costly. And here's another really concrete example of what Mr. Trudeau does. He promised in 2015 to lower the cost of medication. And he promised to do something very simple. There is a board that sets the prices for medication. They said, give us a new list of countries that we can compare to, and we can drop the price of medication for Canadians. Just give us a new list. We're not allowed to do it on our own. You've got to legislate it. Legislate a new list of countries, and we can drop the price of medication. Mr. Trudeau promised to do it. But 4 years passed and he didn't do it. He promised in 2015. So what? Why did he break that promise? And then we started looking to see, well, what happened? Why did he break that promise? Well, guess what happened over the past 4 years? Guess who he met with? He met with the big pharma lobbyists, the insurance lobbyists, who tried to lobby him and say, no, don't drop the price of medication. Don't bring in free pharmacare. It's going to hurt our profits. Guess how many times he met with his government, Mr. Trudeau's government? Guess how many times they met with the big pharma and insurance lobbyists together? Total. Rough guess. 50, that's a lot of times. 30, even higher. 800 is close. If you put together the big pharma and the insurance lobbyists, that the times they met with the Liberal government over the past 4 years that we can count, because it's all registered, we've counted, our researchers have counted 875 times. So it comes as no surprise that they abandoned the promise to lower the cost of medication. But guess what he did? Right now, guess what we're in right now? We're election period. Guess what Mr. Trudeau likes to do during election periods? Promises and lies, kind of both, right? He made a promise to lower the cost of medication by doing exactly what he promised to do in 2015. How can we believe him? How can we believe him? That's really what it comes down to. Exactly. And the thing is that, you know, Mr. Scheer is going to now say, Mr. Scheer just announced today, oh, I'm gonna stop giving money to the wealthy corporations. Come on, who's going to believe that? Who's going to believe that? Mr. Scheer and his government have consistently given the most, billions and billions of dollars to the wealthiest corporations and the wealthiest Canadians. That's what they do. And when they do that, they cut taxes for the wealthy. Guess what else they cut? They cut services that people need. And we don't need to look further than Ontario, than Toronto. Families have to pay for it. Let's look at what Mr. Ford has done. He said he was for the people, but who was he really for? For the powerful corporations. He cut services, he cut their taxes and cut services for families. We've got massive class sizes, education being cut, healthcare is being cut, but we've got a different way. We're done with Liberals and Conservatives taking Canadians for granted, right? We're done with that. We're done with that. No more. We've got a new deal for people. A new deal that says we've got the courage to take on Big Pharma. We've got the courage to take on the insurance industry and say, you know what? We're going to make sure if you need medication in our country, you use your health card, not your credit card. That's what we're going to do. And you know what we're going to say? We said today, we announced today a really bold plan, something I'm really excited about. You know, there's 1 in 3 Canadians have no coverage when it comes to dental care, right? We know that at least 4.3 million people, 4.3 million Canadians, our brothers and sisters, you know, our family, people very close to us, do not get the care they need because they can't afford it. So what we announced today is immediately, within the first 100 days of a new Democratic government, we're going to put in place something that completes Tommy Douglas's dream, not just dental care, but Denticare. Denticare. Our plan will immediately cover everyone who makes less than $70,000 a year, who doesn't have public or private coverage, will be covered immediately with our plan. It's government-funded, public coverage for everyone who needs it under $70,000. Immediately. When I first announced this, I was telling folks, I was getting goosebumps. Like, I think about the people that could benefit from this right now. I met families and I met people who say, you know what? I'm making an okay living, I'm getting by, but I just don't have enough money to worry about my dental care because it just costs too much. And our plan for a family that's got 4 people in the family that need to get cleanups and checkups, and maybe 1 or 2 people that need to get maybe a filling done, our plan would save that family $1,200 a year. It's a massive savings. It's a real savings. And my friends, I put it to you again, you know, at the end of the day, we can make the big difference. We can make sure young people have a brighter future. We can take on the climate crisis. We can invest in healthcare. We can make sure people have affordable bills when it comes to their cell phone, which are paying the highest in the world. We can take on the big telecom. We can take on the big pharma because we're not in it for the rich. We're in it for people. We're in it for you. That's what we do. And with great champions like our candidates we have here today, with our great champions like Maria and Yafet and Andrea, and the whole team and this community and the surrounding areas, we're going to elect new Democrats. And we're going to fight for a better future. And we're going to do that together. Let's make it happen. Hey. And I guess we're going to take some questions now. Somebody's going to start.
We are. We're going to take
facilitating that.
questions. So if you'd like to ask our leader a question, please let me know, because I'm the boss here now.
Hey.
Okay, who'd like to ask a question?
We
Yes,
got a
ma'am.
roving mic around? Okay.
How are you going to do that?
I was a former teacher, and whenever the dental hygienist came into our classroom and he checked everybody's teeth, there were some kids who got a letter going home that they had to have their teeth, they had to visit a dentist. A lot of times they didn't go.
They didn't go.
Because they couldn't afford it.
That's right.
So, Ted, that was like 20 years ago. So what are you going to do that's going to change?
Okay, I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do. So thank you very much for the question. Just to repeat it real quickly, how are we going to do this? The question is, how are we going to make sure people get this coverage, this plan that we're talking about? And I want to make this really clear. It's about choices. So governments have choices that they make. There is obviously limited resources, but there's certain priorities. Now, I'm going to give you an example of what Mr. Trudeau did with the limited resources we have. There's only so much money we have to spend. And what does a government do with that money? That's the question. They do what's in their priority. So they've got a set of priorities. And they go, okay, what are our priorities? We're going to spend money on those priorities. I'm going to give you an example of, just tally this with me, what Mr. Trudeau spent last year. So in the fall economic statement, that's just last year, in the fall, 2018, in the fall economic statement, Mr. Trudeau put forward a massive giveaway to corporations. He gave them basically $14 billion. And he gave $14 billion to the richest corporations so they could buy corporate jets and limousines. It was written in the fall economic statement, corporate tax cut that was basically giving $14 billion away. He paid $14 billion to the corporations. He bought a pipeline for $4.5 billion. We're almost at $20 billion right now, right? That's $20 billion. I just mentioned that he wrote off the loans for corporations to the tune of $6 billion. We're getting up to $26 billion. Guess how much this plan would cost to cover everyone who doesn't have any coverage, who earns less than $70,000? A little bit less, actually. Very close, actually. That's a good guess. $856 million.
And
So
there's your
less
answer.
than $1 billion. So that's it. That's the contrast. We make better choices.
Questions? Who else has a question? Reverend Sky.
I'm going to get a mic to you.
Sure.
Reverend?
We need to stand up, right? Okay. Our city is besieged by gun violence. I work with mothers and families who lose their kids to gun violence, and there's no care for them after they have gone through the trauma. What specifically will you do, or will your government do, to provide care for youth, the families, and communities after they've gone through that trauma?
Thank you for the question. Thank you. It's a very serious question because we are faced with a pretty serious epidemic here in Toronto, specifically in Toronto. And it hurts to see the stories when they come on the news. We lose young people. Families get torn apart because of the loss. And it hurts to hear that. And it hurts those families. And you touched on a really important part. After that horrible loss, then the families are left to pick up the pieces. And often they don't know what to do. It's really, really tough. And so it's a complex question. And I don't want to assume that I know all the answers because it's very complex. But there's a couple things I know we need to do. There's supports that we need to put in place for families. And those supports aren't there right now. So when we talk about head-to-toe healthcare coverage, in that we need to also recognize that there's a big gap when it comes to counseling and support services and mental health services dealing with the stress and the trauma. And that's why what we believe is what's missing in our healthcare system, what people are telling me is there's not enough focus on those supports. And so when we talk about including medication coverage for all, dental care for all, we also want to include those support services for families. That means mental health services and those supports that families need when they go through these difficult times. We believe in putting that into the healthcare system.
Thank you. Question? Question? Yes, sir.
What are you going to do with the pipeline that Trudeau bought?
Well, First off, we wouldn't have bought the pipeline in the first place. That was a bad decision. And we certainly, what we've committed to, we certainly don't believe it should be expanded. And very recently, the BC court has now again said that the decision-making around allowing it or approving it is flawed, something we already knew. They again now have ruled that there's problems with it, and that project again is now going to be challenged. So Mr. Trudeau just doesn't seem to get it. This project should not go ahead. The Trans Mountain, what it does is it goes through into a coastal area where it puts the coastal community at risk, the coastline of BC, which is a beautiful, pristine coastline. The diluted bitumen that's being transported, no one knows how to clean it up. So one oil spill could result in a massive devastation to the environment, to the coastline, and to thousands of workers. So our position is very clear. We need to stop the expansion. We should not go ahead with it. It is not the right thing to do.
You have a question, sir? Okay, question here.
Oh. Okay. It's so bad. Sure. Sure. I'll talk about it. Yeah, we're gonna have the mic. We're gonna get the question, so I'll just repeat it for folks. Question was on car insurance, and question was on carbon tax. So let me talk about both of those. First off, the only reason why I know a lot about the insurance issues because I was provincial, and we put up a big fight because what's happened in Ontario is a lot of what's happening at the federal level. The governments in Ottawa, whether they've been Liberal or Conservative, and recently the governments in Ontario, Liberal and Conservative, have made a whole bunch of laws that benefit the people at the very top. So in the case of auto insurance, every law that was made when I got into office, I remember every single law that was being made, Liberals brought it in, now Conservatives are bringing in, kept on benefiting insurance companies and hurting families. Allowed them to make more and more profits and people to get less coverage, but to be paid more for it. Imagine that. We say, you know, we're going to charge more for the movie ticket, but you can only watch half the show. It's pretty much what they're doing. They're charging us more and more, and they're ripping us off essentially, and they're covering us less. So what it's going to take is someone with the courage to stand up. And I can tell you, Andrew Horvath, the Ontario New Democratic leader, and the entire Ontario New Democratic team have the courage to do that. They're going to stand up to them. And then we're gonna another question coming up, but before that, I just want to touch on the carbon tax. What we know is that there is a price to pollution. When companies pollute, when pollution goes into the air, when pollution goes into the water, we all pay the price. It means the water is not clean. It means the air is not clean to breathe, and it's a real thing. I met a young mom in BC, and because of climate crisis, the hotter temperatures, the longer summers, the hotter summers, forest fires are raging in BC more than ever before. Just to give you a concept of what it means, in BC what it means is, because the forest fires are so intense and so long, the past 2 summers in a row, minus the last one, but the 2 ones before that, the summers were so long and so hot, the forest fires were so bad that doctors recommended people not to go outside and breathe the air. So when I asked the mom what she was most worried about, she said she was worried about the future for her baby, but she was worried about the following summer because she's worried if on some days whether or not her child could breathe the air. So if you look at that mom and look at that baby in the eyes and say to them, is there a price to pollution? Yeah, there is. There is a price. But the way that price should be applied should not exempt the biggest polluters, what Mr. Trudeau has done. The biggest polluters should pay their fair share. Families should be supported, but the biggest polluters have to pay their fair share.
Thank you. So you're next, and then you.
My question is, the young children, I am a mother with 5 children. I live this area. I am very supportive for Maria.
Yes, she's awesome.
My children, they graduate, most of them, but they cannot afford to leave my house.
Oh, yes.
They cannot afford rent, they cannot pay a house, they cannot even thinking about marriage. Because, Mom, what we can do, we live better here. But it's not a solution.
Yeah.
And my other question is, the OHIP car is covering only the hospital bed.
Yeah.
That I never knew until my son get leukemia time ago, 17 years ago.
So sorry to hear that.
And no, it's finished. Now he's alive, 20 years old. He's doing good.
Good.
But that day I discovered that the OHIP car is not covering the medication, the
Yes.
chemotherapy,
Yes.
nothing. I was surprised. They told me, Mom, you have insurance. That time we were working cash. We didn't have insurance. We were in welfare. They push you to go to welfare because if it's not covering the medication in the hospital, how you can have a medication outside of the hospital?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Thank you for the questions. Thank you. Met, can I say Met Senate? Can I say thank you, Met Senate? Yes. Met Senate for the question. And Iska Waran? Fian? Okay, good. Thank you so much, though, for your question. You touched on two big ones. One, it was very funny the way you said it about the housing. Kids can't leave the house. You're right. It's too hard. They're comfortable, but I mean, really, they can't afford it. It's too expensive. They can't leave. And parents are like, they're happy to have their kids, but they also want them to spread their wings and be able to find their own place. Maybe parents really want them to go more than... But the reality is, the kids want to go too, but they can't afford it. But this is a very serious thing. Kids can't afford to find a place because what's happened in our country for the past 30 years, the federal government has neglected its job. If you look around every community, not just Toronto, but across Canada, where there was affordable housing, where there's cooperatives, where people can go and live there with affordable rents. You could be a young student or a young family, or you could be a senior, where there was affordable housing, non-profit housing, or non-market housing. These housing units that are affordable, that people can live in with dignity and their quality, great places, they were built up until the 90s. What happened in the 90s? The federal government stopped funding these projects. So for 30 years, the federal government stopped building affordable homes, and now we have a housing crisis. But it's not a surprise, it's because of a decision. And again, I want to bring back to the choices. The governments in Ottawa, Liberal and Conservative, had choices. And they chose to cut taxes for the corporations, make sure there was big loopholes for CEOs. They let them send money offshore. You've heard of offshore tax havens? Billions of dollars go there. They're choosing this. This is not a by chance, oh, it just happened. It's a choice. They're choosing not to build housing. They're choosing not to address a crisis. Mr. Trudeau chose to do this. He made a big announcement. He said, I'm going to build housing. Guess what we found out? In fact, the Parliamentary Budget Office found out that Mr. Trudeau is spending less on housing than even Mr. Harper did. The Parliamentary Budget found that he spent 19% less on housing in percentage of GDP than Mr. Harper. So he's actually spending less on housing. We're going to do it differently. We're going to say housing is a priority. It's something that should be a right. We are going to build 500,000 new affordable homes so young people have a bright future, where housing is affordable. We're going to take on speculators, the foreign investors who put money into Canada thinking our houses are like a stock option or like stock markets. We're going to end that by putting in a foreign buyer's tax. If you're a permanent resident or a citizen, you can buy, but if you're buying from afar, there's going to be a big tax to make sure we stop and discourage that. Mir's really good at keeping the questions going. I like that. We got to bring you to the next town.
Okay, so Jagmeet, first of all, welcome to Humber River community.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's a different kind of question. It's a courage validation question. Okay, so we have examples where we have countries south the border who believe on building walls, and basically pitting one person against somebody else. As Canadians, we have like a reputation of helping and welcoming every single person. I just need to know how courageous you are to stand up in front of those parties who have policies which support anti-immigration.
Great question. I really appreciate it. I've said it again and again, and I'm happy to say it now. I will unequivocally defend the beauty of our country as a place that's built on immigration, that's built on people coming here and choosing Canada as our home, that makes us stronger, that makes us more beautiful, that builds up a better country. And I've called out people that are divisive, that spread messages that are hateful. Things like saying there's a fear of mass immigration or blaming refugees for problems. See, what happens is when people don't have housing, we talked about housing, when people don't have jobs that help pay the bills, that help make ends meet, when corporations make massive amounts of money, the economy is going so well, but people aren't benefiting from that economy, what happens is some political leaders are going to come around and say, oh, you know whose fault it is? It's that new immigrant's fault. It's that refugee's fault. When really, it's a fault of governments that chose to benefit the people at the top and hurt everyone else. It's their fault. It's corporations that are exploiting workers. It's their fault. So we want to make sure that the right target is there. And I'm going to make sure every single time I say it is not immigrants' fault. It's not new Canadians. It's not refugees. It's decisions that governments have made that have benefited and profited powerful corporations that have hurt Canadians. That's where we target our energy. Let's get you the mic. Give us 1 sec. Mike's coming around here. He's going to reach it over to you.
Okay. Okay, I got 2 questions. One is this gun control, because they're killing people, senseless killing. On top of that, and if you win government, what are you going to start doing if you become Prime Minister of Canada? What will you first tackle?
And your second question?
Was the gun control,
Okay.
the massive gun killing?
Okay. Thank you so much. I got to say, Maria's really good at it. It's really tough what's going on in Toronto. Like, it's hard to read those stories, right? Like, every time we read those stories on the news, or we see the news and we hear about another gun violence incident where someone's lost their life, it hurts us to see that. It hurts us because we love our city. I love this city. This is a city I was born in Toronto. I love this city. And anytime I see those stories, it makes me feel so sad to see that. And I think about the bright, young life that it's stolen from us. You know, what that young person could have done. It hurts to hear that. So again, this is a complex thing. It's not like we can do one thing to solve gun violence, but there's a couple things we can do, right? There's a couple things we can do. One of the things that we've said, if a city asks for the right to be able to ban handguns, we should allow that city the right to do so. We should give the city the right to do so. And we will make, and that's our commitment, we will make the legislative changes that allow cities like Toronto, where the mayor and the council have said that that's something they want to do. We will give the power legislatively to the city to do that. The second thing, though, is a more complex question. And we know we've met with experts, people in communities who say, we know the solutions. We know what we need. Our young people don't see a bright future. Our young people are worried. They're afraid. And they go down a bad path because they have no hope. And when someone has no hope, they become desperate. And when someone's desperate and they're hurting, they lash out. And so the root cause of violence is very complex. I don't want to act like I know all the answers to this. It's very complex. But we know that if we invest in communities, give young people a bright future, make sure they've got a good place to live, a quality place they can afford, if they can get jobs, if they can get education, if we can build up their bright future, we can move into a positive direction. We know we can do it. Yes.
I'd like to speak to you about affordability of buying a home. So I have a young family and I rent. It's a lot of money, but we would like something more. We would like our kids to stay in this city. We love this city. It's where I was born, where my children were born. But the affordability in the city to even buy a home for families who are trying, saving, trying to get there. The new laws that came out with the help from the government, the initiatives for first-time homebuyers, don't even affect the GTA because of the market.
Yep.
It's very strong, we know that, but what can the government do and the NDP government do to help families who want something more than just renting and having continual rent increases? They want to own, they want to stay
Yep.
where they are and enjoy their communities. York, Southwest, and all the way.
Hey. I like you took that from really serious housing, you know, importance of housing, and then you slipped in York Southwest. That's how we do. So, I mean, you touched on something that's really important. I think many people in this room will all agree that they're worried about that. Whether they have housing, they're worried about their kids then. And maybe they don't have people in this room don't have housing either, or are in the same position where they're renting and they want something more stable. So this, again, is a bigger problem, but there is ways to solve it. And I'm confident we can solve it if we make the right choices. So there's kind of two parts to it. There's how do we control that the housing prices are going up so fast? There's how do we provide some relief? And then thirdly, how do we help first-time home buyers? There's three parts to it. So the first part is to get at the root cause. Why are housing prices going up so fast? Well, we found there's two things that we can control. I touched on it, but let me just get in more details. So what people are doing, it's massively impacting Vancouver and BC, but it's actually also happening here in Toronto. So because Toronto has a stable housing market and housing prices are going up, there's foreign investors that are just dropping money and buying homes here. They're buying condos here, and they're just sitting on it. And it's driving up the cost of housing. It's speculation. So we are proposing to stop that. BC actually put in place a foreign buyers tax, and it worked. It actually brought down the price of housing. It's working. We want to bring that national. So I would put in place a national foreign buyers tax so that we could stop that upward rising pressure on housing that's becoming out of control. It's literally out of control. So that's one step. The second one is money laundering. Now, money laundering is actually also contributing to the rising cost of housing. They said it's at least 5% that they can count in BC, but there's much more that we can't actually count. So money laundering is something that the federal government should and can tackle, but we haven't actually seen our government do that. Mr. Trudeau, I asked him the question actually in Parliament just a couple months ago when we were in Parliament. I asked him, why is nothing being done to tackle money laundering? There's a department for money laundering, but you haven't actually hired anyone in the department, and there's a budget for it, but no one's using the budget to do the job. It's the government's fault. And I guess what Mr. Trudeau said to the question, he didn't respond. No surprise. But I mean, so we would make sure that that department was funded and was given a clear mandate to tackle money laundering. And finally, when we look at countries around the world where housing is affordable, there is a rental opportunity that's affordable. So right now, if you want to rent or buy, it's almost the same price. Like the mortgages and the rental fees are almost the same. So it's driving pressure on making it hard to own a home. So countries actually have invested in non-market housing, cooperative housing, so you can have a place to live that's quality, that's affordable, and the rent is very low. And that way you can save up if you want to buy your own, or if you want to stay there, you can stay there, but you have the security of knowing you can stay in that place for as long as you need. And that's also the fear. When you're renting, you never know what's going to happen. If the landlord changes their mind, if they do a renovation, something happens and you lose your place. So what we're proposing is non-market, affordable, quality housing, cooperative housing, where you can live there for as long as you want. And that way it'll create more opportunities for people to either rent affordably or save to buy their own place. And then finally, when it comes to buying their own place, one of the changes that people have asked for is a longer time to pay back the mortgage so they can have smaller payments. So we're going to introduce that. And we're going to double the first-time home buyers tax credit to help people out. But it's really the whole solution. We're not thinking of just one. It's that whole package that's going to really solve this problem. Thanks for being with me on that.
Unfortunately, we have time for only one more question. Evelyn, where'd you go? There you are. Last questioner.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the problems, so I'm wondering about solutions now.
Mm-hmm.
So in our community, unemployment is a big problem. The housing crisis, all those things. But we seem to be relying on creating employment, right? But what's happening, we're creating like part-time jobs and low wage jobs. What ideas do you have? Like, like I'm going to present an alternative. Like, whereas the large companies can go to a bank and negotiate a loan, how about a guarantee for people with lower wages, lower income, savings? How about a guarantee for them when they have their ideas to go forward to the bank? Something like how you have a guarantee for the student loans. How about having that for working class people? What are your ideas on that?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Thank you. To build jobs, I think it's essential. We've got to be able to have a strategy to create jobs, and they've got to be long-term, permanent, quality jobs, because you're absolutely right. What's happening is more and more job creation means part-time, precarious, unstable, unpredictable jobs. And that doesn't help build communities. It makes life very uncertain for a lot of people. And there's probably a lot of people in this room that work jobs that they don't know if they're going to be able to keep. And that unpredictability makes you afraid for the future. And it's hard to build a future when you don't know if you're going to have your job. So what we're proposing is we want to use our dollars, our public dollars, use them very seriously, and make investments in communities to create jobs. One example, we know that there's a climate crisis. People are worried about that. So we've got a plan to tackle the climate crisis, but also create jobs. And they're going to be long-term, stable, quality jobs. What we're hoping to do is, Our commitment is to retrofit every building and every home in Canada. Those jobs will happen in communities. Those retrofit jobs mean those who go in energy audit, so the people that go into the home and audit what needs to be done, the people that install the insulation or the windows or the solar panels, those who sell and distribute those materials, these are jobs created in communities. They can't be sent offshore. They have to happen in communities. So that's one idea. And then finally, on your idea about having access to entrepreneurs who want to be able to set up their own company, we've got to make it easier. Because right now, I remember my brother, we started a small business, and when he tried to do it, it was so complicated. There's so many steps, and he couldn't get funding. It makes it really hard. We want to encourage entrepreneurship, make it easier for people who want to take that jump and start their own business and start their own idea. So it's got to be easier. We've got to find easier ways for people to access capital to start up that company. We've got to find easier ways for people to get supported, less barriers, less complication to actually starting it, making it streamlined. I remember my brother, he's a lawyer, and he had to write all these documents and prepare all these materials, and he's like, this is so complicated. This is like a law case, not just starting up a business. And that's hard, right? Like, how are you going to encourage business if it's so hard to fill out the paperwork? So I agree with you, and we've got to do a lot better. Yeah. We got one last one up there, I think. Yeah, we got to figure out a way to do that. Something I'm going to look at.
Do you have any plans to improve access for mental health treatments for all Canadians?
Yes, great question. Great question. Thank you. It's really fitting that a young person is asking, because this is a growing concern. Like mental health, we're seeing it more and more. People are having concerns, having some serious problems, and they're not getting the help they need. So we talked today about our head-to-toe healthcare coverage. I'm really proud of the fact we want to include medication coverage. That's going to help in some cases. We talked about dental care for people, for Canadians. Our plan is to make it universal. We'll start with our first step for those who make $70,000 or less. But it doesn't end there, because if we want to have a truly head-to-toe healthcare coverage, we've got to include hearing and vision care. We also have to include mental health services, and that's what's been really missing in our healthcare system. And that means that providing the support so people can get the mental health care they need. It might also mean, and it definitely means, help for addictions and rehabilitation, services and counseling. These have to be included in our healthcare system, and right now it's a massive gap. So people are falling through the cracks because there's no supports there. It's not available. So we're going to take that very seriously. It's a part of our commitment. We want true, complete, comprehensive head-to-toe healthcare, including mental health services.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did he do? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming out and meeting the leader. Jagmeet Singh is real. The NDP is a real contender. And in this riding, we are ahead, and we are going to win. Hey. Thank you, my friends. Thank you. Thank you. What do I do now?
I got it. And thank you so much, Maria. Again, you're amazing. I'm going to bring you to all my town halls. You get things moving along. It's awesome. Thanks again to everyone that was here today, everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. We're going to answer some questions from the media, but I just want you to stay put. First off, it's a good look, for the, you'll get on the news maybe, your friends and family will see you all there. I'm like, oh, I saw you. But I want to meet with you all afterwards, though. So stick around. We're going to take some pictures and hang out and spend some time together. So hang tight, and we're going to take some questions right here, okay? Here he goes, from the media, I mean.
Hi, Mr. Singh. It's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News.
Hi, Annie.
There's a story just breaking in Time magazine. It says that Justin Trudeau wore brown face back in 2001 at an Arabian Nights party when he was teaching at a private school. The Prime Minister's office has confirmed that this was Mr. Trudeau in the photo. They say it was an Arabian Nights, and it was back in 2001, before he was Prime Minister, before he was a politician. I'm wondering what you think about this, what your initial reaction is to this story in Time.
Well, it's troubling. I mean, it's insulting. Anytime we hear examples of brown face or black facing, it's making a mockery of someone for what they live and what their lived experiences are. I think he needs to answer for it. I think he's got to answer the question why he did that, and what does that say about what he thinks about people who because of who they are, because of the color of their skin, face challenges and barriers and obstacles in their life. Racism is real. People in this room have felt it. I've heard the stories. I've experienced it in my life. He's got to answer those questions.
Justin Trudeau is expected to address the media tonight that are traveling with him on the election campaign. I'm wondering what you would like to hear from him and what you think that he should be saying to the public.
I think what this shows is something that we've seen some examples of. Now it seems to be a pattern behavior. We see one Mr. Trudeau in public that seems, I'll be honest with you, seems really nice, right? Very friendly, very warm in public. But behind closed doors, it seems like it's a different Mr. Trudeau. Behind closed doors, we saw at a private fundraiser when activists who were saying that our community is being poisoned by mercury, people from Grassy Narrows, they put up a sign saying, hey, our communities are being poisoned. What are you going to do about the fact that people are dying in our community that are suffering because of mercury poison? He mocked them and said, thank you for your donation, while the crowd of wealthy fundraisers, the attendees of the fundraiser, clapped on and jeered these protesters. I mean, on one hand, he says that Indigenous communities are the most important relationship, but then behind closed doors, he mocks people. They didn't attack him. They said, our people are suffering from mercury poisoning, and he mocked those people. I mean, what type of behavior does that show from a prime minister who mocks people who are saying this? I want to say, who is the real Mr. Trudeau? Is it who we see in public, or the one behind doors that forgives loans for corporations but makes students pay $3 billion? Who is the real Mr. Trudeau? Is it the one behind closed doors? The one when the cameras are turned off and when no one sees? Is that the real Mr. Trudeau? Because more and more, that seems like it is.
J'aimerais vous poser la même question en français, M. Singh, sur les actions qui semblent être attribuées à M. Trudeau qui datent de 2001. Votre réaction sur son action à lui?
Donc, je pense c'est une grande question qu'elle a besoin de répondre. C'est tellement important qu'il réponde à ces questions. Parce que les gens qui font face au racisme, ce n'est pas une blague pour eux. Ce n'était pas une blague pour moi personnellement, mais beaucoup de gens dans cette chambre ont fait face des défis, des barrières, des obstacles à cause de racisme. Donc, quelqu'un qui pense que c'est une blague, c'est pas acceptable, pas du tout. Donc, il faut répondre aux questions. Et je ne sais pas qu'est-ce qu'ils vont dire, mais c'est une grande question.
Vous sentez-vous insulté vous-même personnellement par ce genre de comportement?
Je pense que ce n'est pas un moi, mais je pense que c'est vraiment une grande question de c'est qui le vrai M. Trudeau. Parce que dans la public, je peux dire qu'il me semblait comme quelqu'un sympa, des gentil en public, mais derrière des portes fermées, c'est toujours un différent M. Trudeau. Quelqu'un qui veut aider les grandes corporations, les grandes multinationales, quelqu'un qui a taquiné les gens, les militants qui disent que dans leur communauté, l'eau était poisonnée. Donc, elle a taquiné ces gens. Elle a ri à gens qui ont dit qu'on a un problème de santé. Donc, dans la vie publique, il y a un M. Trudeau, mais derrière des portes fermées, il y a un autre M. Trudeau.
Est-ce que vous trouvez ce genre de comportement acceptable?
Non, ce n'est pas du tout acceptable, mais c'est un pattern à ce moment. C'est une continuation des actions qu'il a prises, des actions qui montrent qu'il n'est pas ce qu'il a dit. Il n'est pas le vrai Justin Trudeau qu'il a montré au public. C'est quelqu'un de différent, quelqu'un qui n'est pas là pour les gens. Thanks so much, by the way, for bearing with me, folks.
Camera. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Singh, this is Freddy Velez from IMICAM. I used to work for a Hispanic newspaper here, but now I'm starting a new digital website dedicated to promote immigrants in Canada. Immigration hasn't been an issue in the last federal elections, but this time around it seems that it's going to take some kind of relevance, especially because Mr. Bernier is now attacking immigration to Canada. There are a few people who are there to defend the contribution of immigrants to Canada. What is your proposal in terms of number of immigrants coming to Canada, helping those immigrants to settle down here in Canada smoothly and being able to cooperate, to contribute at their fullest?
Yes, thank you very much. So first off, we need immigration in Canada. Immigration has built up this country. We need it. It's something that helps our economy. It's something that gives us richness to our society. It's the reason why we have such an incredibly diverse room right now. That's a strength of Canada. It's a beautiful thing. And I reject anyone who makes a threat or makes a fear or creates a fear around mass immigration. That is false. That is a lie. And that creates hatred and it creates divisions. And that's wrong. And when it comes to the number, I mean, as many as we possibly, as our country can accommodate, we need immigration. It's something that helps our country out. So we'll look at what makes the most sense. There's obviously a balance between making sure we can welcome new arrivals to Canada. There's the right supports in place. So when people come to Canada, they can contribute their best. They can be a part of society. So we want to make sure that the right services in place. We also want to make sure that people who come here with international training, international experience, that training and that international experience is very valuable to Canadians. They can contribute not just for themselves, but for all of us. And we know that because the current system does not recognize those talents and that experience, they're missing out, the new arrivals are missing out, and we're missing out on what they could offer. We've got to do a much better job of recognizing the international talents and experience that people come with.
Bonjour encore, M. Singh.
Oui.
Madame May, aujourd'hui en ondes à Radio-Canada, on lui a posé la question si elle aimerait avoir peut-être une alliance avec le NPD. Elle n'a pas tout à fait répondu à la question, mais moi je me demandais, est-ce que vous voyez une possibilité d'une alliance avec le Parti vert? Et si oui ou non, pourquoi?
Donc, si quelqu'un veut m'aider, j'ai seulement dit qu'il y a un parti avec lequel que je ne peux pas travailler. C'est à cause de le fait que M. Scheer n'est pas les mêmes valeurs que moi. Il est quelqu'un qui est contre les droits de la personne, les droits des femmes. Donc, à cause de ça, j'ai dit non à travailler avec M. Scheer. Mais je suis prêt. Si quelqu'un veut m'appuyer, de mettre en œuvre les soins dentaires qu'on a proposés, si quelqu'un est prêt de mettre en œuvre l'assurance médicaments qu'on a proposé, si quelqu'un est prêt de travailler avec nous pour s'attaquer à la crise climatique, je suis ouvert aux discussions, je suis ouvert aux conversations. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, team. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you to our great candidates. Thank you to you, our team, that make everything possible. Thank you very much. Let's hang out.